Hello everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Hayden Davidson. I've been selling on Amazon for 5 years, started in January 2019 now, so I'm feeling proper old now. I was really young, living at home with mum when I started actually. Now all the way over here living in London. So I've sold about 1.4, 1.5 million. I do unique bundles, private label, online arbitrage, and I've got an Amazon advertising agency as well doing PPC. So with the clients that we manage, with my own accounts as well, selling in the UK and the USA, I've got a pretty versed view, including the contacts that I've got, my mentors, people that I mentor myself as well. I've got a pretty versed look on the whole landscape of Amazon selling as a whole. I know people that have exited brands, I know people that sold brands, I know people that buy brands, I know people that do arbitrage, private label bundles, whatever, you name it, I know about it, right? Because I've been in this space for many years now. And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the raw reality of selling on Amazon in 2024, Amazon FBA, whether that's in the UK or the USA, because there's a lot of nonsense out there. That's not to say I'm not going to be one of these sort of gurus that says that every other guru, every other person talks about Amazon is full of rubbish, because it's simply not true. There's a lot of really good people in this space I don't think get enough credit, but obviously there's a lot of bullshitters as well. So in this video I want to talk about the reality, the way that I see it, from an honest look, without trying to sell you any courses or anything like that. Just to talk about this and help you out. So let's dive into it. So I think the first thing we got to do is look at the selling landscape in terms of what model you want to do, because that's very different. I'm then going to jump into the marketplaces, the potential marketplaces, and then the sort of cost to entry on all the models you want to get into. That's what I want to jump into predominantly on this video, so that you've got a good idea of where you stand and how much it's going to cost you. So first of all, I'm going to go through the different models, right? So you've got online arbitrage, which is generally like a lot of price tanking, a lot of small margins in that, but you've got to do a volume. And then you've got things called retail arbitrage, where you can go around the shops yourself and try and find products that it's less competitive, because most people aren't willing to do that, but there's still competition there, right? But you can make some good money doing that. I know people make some good money doing retail arbitrage. And then you've got wholesale, which is similar to arbitrage, but there's more security there. And obviously what you can also do with wholesale, or maybe not obviously if you've just started out, is that you can not only, you're going to be doing small margins generally, but after a while, if you can build up some good relationships with your wholesalers or manufacturers or whatever, whether you're doing brand direct or whether you're doing brands, buying from directly from brands, whether you're buying directly from wholesalers that buy from other brands, if you build a good relationship and buy from them for quite a while, over time you might start seeing some more success in that, because you can generally bring the prices down and start negotiating on the prices, and then you can do volume discounts as well. And then you've got private label as well. So private label, whether you're in the UK or the USA, that's it takes obviously a while to build it up, right? And I'm going to go into each strategy in a minute properly, but it takes a while to build that up, obviously, right? You know, it's more cash flow intensive, and it's a time intensive thing as well. And then you've got things called bundles, which is predominantly what I mainly focus on, I would say. That's probably about 45% of my business is bundles, unique bundles, that kind of thing. And it can also be slow, like private label, in the way that you need to build up multiple listings, but also it can be highly profitable, and there's a lot less competition if done correctly, a lot of potential there. So they're kind of the different strategies, right? They're the different strategies. Now, it's important to remember that each strategy has got pros and cons, and not one of them is better than the other. So upon Amazon, on the Amazon space and on the YouTube and TikTok and everything like that, people talking about the Amazon space, I mean, you're going to get some people that tell you that Amazon FBA is dead as a whole, right? And they're just categorically wrong. And the reason they're categorically wrong is because no one can say it's dead. And the reason you can't say it's dead, the reason it's categorically wrong that they say that, is because there's billions of pounds and dollars traded on the platform every single week, right? 51% of that, 53% of that is coming from third-party sellers. So they're not working for free, let me tell you that, okay? So it's not dead, there's just right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. And a lot of dinosaurs that have been doing it for many years, most people that say it's dead have been doing it for many years. They haven't really got their teeth into it properly, and they say it's dead because they never really gave it their all, and now they're not willing to learn new processes, or they don't know enough people that know the new processes, because they're just hanging around with the doom and gloomers and the doom and gloom Facebook groups, the doom and gloom YouTubers that say it's dead, and that they're just not versed on the new ways of doing it. So I can assure you it's very much alive. I can conclude that. All of my clients can conclude that. My agency clients conclude that. My friends and mentees in this space and mentors and everything like that. I can assure you it's very much alive. But with the different strategies, they've all got pros and cons. As I said, it's important to remember that there's not one right and one wrong strategy. In my experience, they all work, but they all work to different levels. And the most important thing to remember is that every single one of these strategies has different elements to them, and they require different skill sets and different mindsets and the way you manage your emotions around them. So I'll explain what I mean by that by going through each strategy. So retail arbitrage and online arbitrage, they fall under the same bracket in my opinion, right? And by the way, I'm not talking about different marketplaces right now. I'm just talking about them as a whole, and then I'm going to go over them. You know, the potentials for different marketplaces and everything. So online arbitrage, retail arbitrage are generally considered a very similar thing. What you're doing is you're buying a product from a retail store, which is generally the end consumer price, right? So this price is generally not going to be a great price, because it's just like, you know, the people that are buying them, the consumers, are getting the worst price, right? The manufacturer sells it to the wholesaler at a good price. The wholesaler puts their margin on top, sells it to the retailer, and then the retailers sell it to the sellers. So the only time you really make money from retail arbitrage or online arbitrage is from clearance deals or sales, right? Where usually these are things that that stores or retailers online are trying to get rid of, right? So you constantly find yourself, and I did online arbitrage in the UK for 1.5 years when I started, so I'm pretty versed on this. You usually find yourself trying to find the lowest price products, and then generally what happens is everyone else finds them products, especially in the UK marketplace, and then all of a sudden you've got loads of sellers coming onto these listings. Same with retail arbitrage a lot of the time, but not as much. You get a lot of sellers come onto the listing, the price gets tanked because everyone's jumped on it at the same time. Supply and demand. You know, if it sells 30 or 40 a month and there's 100 sellers on it with 10 each in stock, then someone's got to drop their price and get rid of their products faster and speed that listing up. Otherwise, everyone's going to be sitting there for around 2 years to get rid of all that stock. I think that makes sense statistically if I work their numbers out roughly, you know, until you get your money back. So you can't. A lot of people, they will say that you can sit on a listing and wait for the price to recover, because supply and demand, you know, demand will keep going and then supply will eventually run down because the sales will stop in that store or in the on the retail store or on the online store. But that's not always the case because of supply and demand. You know, how many is that item going to sell? So it takes a long time to recover sometimes, and you can't always give your cash flow. You can't always allow your cash flow to do that, okay? You need to recycle that cash flow quicker than 2 years, okay? So, but in a lot of cases it can recover, right? And so a lot of people will jump on listings that have got a minimum sales of say 100 a month, 150 a month, because worst case scenario, even if you get the 100 sellers, at least you can recover your money in maybe 3 or 4 months, even if it does price tank, right? But a lot of the times it won't price tank, right? It will go down to a certain amount, sorry. It will always price tank to a certain amount, but a lot of the time there's like a threshold where a lot of the sellers just sort of agree to sell it at that price. Not literally, they're not talking to each other, but they all know they don't want to go below that, because that's like, you know, the amount it costs to sell the item, for the warehouse cost, the prep costs, and everything like that. So you get to a stage where you end up running a business that's pretty low margin, and the only way to grow it is to do the high margins, is to do the low margins and the high volume. And that's what most people do with arbitrage. And then retail arbitrage is slightly different because, as I say, there's less competition, but generally you're still going to have to push quite a lot of items to make some really good money. So that's that, right? That's that. And that's mainly, I would say, in the marketplaces that are not the USA, because in the USA it's a different ball game completely. This is the marketplaces like the UK that are smaller marketplaces that haven't quite got that crazy demand, right? Obviously, it happens sometimes in the USA as well if there's not that many sales for the listing. As a general rule, though, to talk about arbitrage, it depends how many people are buying that listing, and then that's going to help you in terms of limiting the competition and the price tanking in general. And then we've got wholesale, which is very similar, but the only difference is that there's going to be less competition generally, although it's definitely sort of building up now, I would say. There's going to be less competition because there's a few barriers that you've got to go through. You can either buy directly from the brand, or you can buy directly from a wholesaler itself. And a lot of these wholesalers, a lot of these brands will need you to go through like a verification status, where a lot of the sellers will have to prove they don't just sell on Amazon. They've got multiple, third-party sites and websites and everything like that. A lot of brands or wholesalers will only sell to certain people, or you've got to do like minimum spends. And then what comes with the minimum spends, what comes with the businesses that are more sophisticated, should I say, the VAT registered sellers, the people that have been doing this for years, they've got staff to pay, they've got warehouses, they've got overheads, they're doing numbers, they don't want to do tiny margins. So what you'll find with wholesale and brand deals and stuff like that, buying directly from that, is that there tends to be, although it's still smaller margin, less tanking because people know that they've all got to make a little bit of money. So people, unless they're doing crazy black hat strategies where they're trying to lose money themselves or everyone else drops their price, go out of stock so that they can hold the listing, there is people like that. Generally, people are not going to just be tanking it like crazy, like arbitrage, because a lot of the arbitragers are newer sellers. They don't really know what they're doing, so they think they're making money when they're not. So a lot of the time it's like break even. With wholesale, with buying directly from brands, tends to be less competition, tends to be more experienced sellers. Therefore, you've still got to do a volume game, still got to be small margins, but you might be able to retain the steadiness of your business a bit more because you've got more experienced sellers. Now, that's in my experience how that can work. Online arbitrage can work, retail arbitrage can work, brand deals can work, wholesale can work. It just depends what strategies you want to implement and how much cash flow you've got and the resources that you're willing to build up. If we then look at private label, so private label is more based around, most people do private label. I do private label and I manufacture in the UK, by the way, so you don't have to do it like this. But most people manufacture in China and they're shipping it over. So you go to a site called Alibaba, and what most people are doing are looking for items that are like just items that you can copy pretty easily, and they're trying to add like their own element to it. They're trying to improve it somewhat, right? Now that kind of like died a slow death a few years ago, like private label, where it's just as easy to say someone's selling toothpicks, let's go on Alibaba, find toothpicks and then ship them in and sell my own. That used to work because that was supply and demand, and there was too much demand on the platform and not enough supply. Now there's far more supply than there is demand on Amazon, right, for a lot of categories, so it's not as easy to do that, especially with small and light stuff that's so cheap to ship and manufacture. So what the case is now, that you actually have to be good. If you're doing private label, you have to be good. Now that doesn't mean it's like crazy difficult, right? My private label brand is not a crazy selling brand. I've only just launched it to test out private label, right? It's a seasonal brand as well, so it's going to pick up significantly very soon because it's a seasonal brand. We ranked it fairly easily because there wasn't that much competition. So with private label, it's kind of a case now where you've got to build a proper brand, or you've got to build a proper product that people really want. You've got to find a gap in the market that is not being serviced. You've got to find keywords that are not being serviced, that there's still room for you to compete, that it's not going to cost you a fortune in ad spend, to PPC cost spend, to get to the stage where you're actually organically ranking, so you're not having to pay for all of your clicks. But in order to do that, you've got to have a good product, and the product is always key. The product is always key. So if you're going to do private label, you've got to understand that you have to actually have a good product. I would recommend building a proper brand, but also it requires significant investment if you're going to do it properly. I would say minimum 3, 4, 5,000. That's like for photography, that's for getting samples, that's for importing the item yourself, creating the listings and everything like that, setting up Seller Central. I'd say it's a minimum of 3,000 to 5,000, but anyone that's going to do it properly probably needs a minimum of 10,000, right? It's not a cheap game to get into, and it's risky as well, right? There's loads of upsides, by the way. It sounds like I'm being negative. I'm not. That usually with great risk comes great reward, and it's I would say it's the holy grail of Amazon if you can do it properly. But I'm letting you know the downfalls, the pit holes. It's so that you don't get stung yourself. With private label, it's amazing if you can crack it, but you could spend a lot of time trying to crack it as a new seller. I'm so glad I didn't go into it as a new seller to start with, because I think I would struggle to have not failed on loads of products to start with. And the problem is with private label, when you're importing these products, a lot of the time the minimum order value is going to be £2,000, £3,000, depending on the cost of good of your product. Therefore, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money to test an item, and you have no reassurance that item's going to work. So there's other ways to do it, but generally it's higher risk but a lot higher reward if you can crack it. And there is a lot of potential in private label, don't get me wrong there. The final strategy I want to talk about here is bundles, right? So you've got unique bundles, and things like that. So on Amazon, similar to arbitrage, there's a couple of types of bundles you can do. You can do your sort of arbitrage bundles where, let's say you've sold an arbitrage product for a few years, doing the first strategy I spoke about, and it's just, let's say it's a couple of, wipes from a well-known brand, for example. And you realise that there's people searching for a 2-pack, or you realise that there's loads of demand for the 1-pack. Maybe there's room for a 2-pack. So what you'll do is go ahead and create your own listing of a 2-pack, and then you'll add it onto Amazon for a good price, maybe higher profit, higher margin for selling that item as a 2-pack than there is a 1-pack. You'll create your own little brand yourself, generic brand, and then you'll go and sell it, right? That can work. And then a lot of the times what you can do is put a unique item with that, so that other sellers are going to stay away from your listing a bit. You know, you might want to put like something else that would go with wipes. I don't know, a cleaning cloth, for example. You might want to put a cleaning cloth with it, and then all of a sudden you've got a unique element, so people can't just jump on your listing as easily and sell that item. They will try, maybe, but a lot of the time they won't bother. And a lot of the times you can give them an IP complaint if you've got a unique element. There's then unique bundle types of things, and you can do your own types of gifting products. You can do your own types of pamper products, all bundled together. You can make your own proper brand with all your branded packaging and everything like that, and put a load of products together and sell them on Amazon. So it's kind of like private label hybrid, if you like, because it is private label in a way, because it's a private label brand. We do a lot of this stuff, but you've got your own branded packaging, and you're selling other people's brands under your brand. You might have a couple of like private label items in there that are cheap to source from China, for example, just to make it even more yours. You might want to put your logo on it, but it's not proper private label. It's not importing multi-thousand-pound goods just to try and sell them as single items. A lot of the time it will just be you sourcing products as wholesalers would, people that are doing the wholesale method, but instead you're putting them into your own bundles, you're creating your own listings, and you're selling them on Seller Central, and that can work really well as well. That's, as I say, one of the main things that I do. One of the downfalls for this is that a lot of the time you need to test a lot of products. It takes you a while to find your feet. A lot of bundles won't be that fast selling. You might sell one a week or one a day for a lot of them, unless you want to spend a lot on PPC. So it takes a while to build up your inventory. So a lot of like my mentees that I help out, a couple of one-to-one sellers that I help out, with a little bit of consulting, I usually advise them, especially in the early days, to mix it with a bit of arbitrage, or mix it with a bit of wholesale, or if they're doing that already, don't just stop that and turn the tap off, because it can take you a while to get that compounding effect from adding loads of bundles together. But yeah, bundles can be fantastic, and sometimes you can launch a bundle and it'll sell 100 in a week, if you do it right. But there's obviously PPC spend to take into account with bundles as well, and unique bundles. You have to spend money on PPC, whereas with arbitrage, wholesale, things like that, a lot of the time you don't have to spend anywhere near as much, if anything at all. So that's the different strategies, right? I wanted to go through in detail different strategies there, because most people don't. The next thing I want to talk about is the marketplaces. Now, the marketplaces are so important. The marketplace that you sell on is going to have a significant effect, on the success that you have. You can't, you might launch the exact same product that you were going to launch in the UK, right? You might be able to ship it to Germany, or source the products from China and ship them to Germany, whatever, and be able to sell it for 2 or 3 times the price and 3 times the profit, just because it's a different marketplace. Now, a lot of people really struggle to get their head around this stuff, but it's true, right? The marketplace that you're in has a huge impact on the success you're potentially going to have. Why? Because Amazon is about supply and demand, and the marketplace that has got the most the most demand and the lowest supply is always going to beat the marketplace that has got too much supply and not enough demand. So it just makes sense to be in the biggest marketplaces or the newer marketplaces that have not got enough supply and they've got so much demand. It's as simple as that, right? So I'm not going to go into detail anymore about that, right? The fact is, you can sell in any marketplace in Amazon. You can run it from whatever company you want to run it from. You can go and set up in them marketplaces as well, as long as you become VAT registered in a lot of the countries like Germany. You have to become VAT registered in that country. Then you can sell in all different marketplaces, right? And the different marketplaces will allow you to fluctuate your prices differently. And all of the strategies that I just mentioned, apart from retail arbitrage, unless you want to go to Germany or America and start going around their shops, all of them work in different marketplaces as well. And you can source from wholesalers or suppliers in different marketplaces as well. And you can get someone to help you run the business over there. You can get prep centers in different countries and then ship them to different countries as well. So there's different marketplaces. You can send in all different marketplaces. Right. And to summarize the whole thing, I just want to say that all the different skills, that's what I was going to talk about, all the different skills that you have, like, you need to figure out what strategy would suit you. So I'm going to list from each different strategy now, just to help you out even further. I'm going to say what sort of skills are required for each strategy. And then I would suggest, because you already know that all strategies work, and it's more important to know what marketplace to launch in, right? So all strategies work. They all work. Don't listen to anyone that's trying to sell you into their way of doing it on Amazon, just so that you don't do X strategy and just buy into their course. That's usually why they're saying only X works. A lot of people that do private label will say that arbitrage doesn't work when they just don't know, because they haven't been in that space and they're just trying to sell you into their thing. Okay, it's very important that you have like this level-minded head view on this stuff. The skills that you're going to require for retail arbitrage, for example, are, I would say, more of an analytical mind. Same with online arbitrage. You don't have to be creative for that stuff. You have to be analytical. You have to be willing to crunch numbers. You have to be willing to be persistent crunching numbers. And you have to be willing to take small margins, right? So if you're going to be okay with price tanking as well, if you're going to be okay with crunching numbers, making sure that even at this margin, if we do X volume, we're going to be okay. If you're okay with building systems and procedures around that to scale that business up, whether that be a warehouse, whether that be outsourcing with prep centers or anything like that, and you're happy to work at that lower margin and create amazing systems and operations strategically so that you can make sure you're a profitable business, and finding ways that you can scratch a little bit more profit if you're going to grow that operation, then maybe that's the right route for you. And I would say it's very similar to wholesale and brand stuff as well. When you're doing that brand direct or wholesale sort of model, it's a very similar set of skills. You have to be analytical, you have to know your systems and your operations, and you have to be okay with doing smaller margins, knowing that eventually you're going to have the resources, i.e. cash, team, time, skills, to be able to source at a lower price and still make good money. You might be able to negotiate shipping with couriers, shipping out from your own warehouse, so that you can actually effectively spend less than your competitors to ship every single item for next day delivery. So then you end up beating a lot of prime sellers because it's going to cost them more, for example. You have to be strategic like that. If we're looking at things like bundles or private label, in my opinion, it's a whole different set of skills until you're at a certain level, unless you're going to get someone else to outsource it. You have to be a certain level of creative. A lot of people try private label, a lot of people try bundles, unique bundles, and they're not very good at it, right? And I'm not talking about the type of arbitrage bundles, by the way. I would say that's more in the first camp that I just mentioned, where you just need to be, you can get a team member to create them on Canva for you and just do arbitrage bundles. I'm talking about like proper brand building bundles, proper creative bundles, gifting, but whatever it is, private label bundles. You have to be more creative, and you just have to have it, if that makes sense. Now, you'll know what I mean by that if you know what I mean. If not, you won't, right? You probably haven't got it if you don't know what I mean. You just need to, you just got it or you haven't when it comes to creative, in my opinion. Some people just can't get their head around certain ways of being creative. I see some people's listings and they're just atrocious, and they think that they're good. And that's not because they're like really bad at doing bundles. It's because they're just not creative, right? Same with private label. unless you're going to outsource it to someone else that is creative, you have to be a certain level of creative, right? So it's just important to understand, I think, if you're going to do the brand route, if you're going to do the private label route, if you're going to launch some epic products that are better than the competition, you can't just launch anything and hope that it's going to work. You have to have a certain level of creativity. So there's two different camps, in my opinion, of of where you should be in terms of your skills. I think you should pick wisely, right? And then once you've mastered that, you should decide what marketplaces you're going to source them in, you're going to sell them in. And then once you've mastered that, you can decide how you want to grow the business into an absolute beast if you want, unless you just want like a side hustle income. So guys, that's a lot of what I know about Amazon for doing it 4.5, 5 years. I hope that video's helped. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like. Ask me any questions you've got in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.